Hey, WordPress people. Welcome back to the WPMRR WordPress podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Link. We're glad to have you.
You're listening to the WordPress Business Podcast. We've got Link on the podcast, Savior of Hyrule this week. One of my faves. What's going on, Link?
Oh, just taking a bit of respite here between beating Ganon and solving all those puzzles. It's pretty relaxing. Good day.
Ganon was a beast in the Ocarina of Time, man. I remember when I was a kid playing that game and, he finally beat Gandorf and it's like, yes, the castle falls, and then Ganon comes out from the rubble and, he's a beast. That must have been scary.
Yeah, it is. Ocarina of Time is maybe one of my, if not my ultimate favorite game of all time. There's just so much going on. And the very first time that you walk out of the forest and you get to see Hyrule Field and everything just comes into view, man, that was a magical moment in video gaming history.
I totally agree. And for a 64-bit game, an N64 game, amazing how robust of a world they could fit on that one single cartridge, man. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Link on the pod this week, also known as Brian Richards. Brian, I have to say, I don't think we've had someone give an Ocarina of Time or Zelda character selection yet. And I'm with you, man. This is my favorite game of all time. So I've been waiting for someone to pick a character from here. So good on you, man.
Good on me. Good on you for having it. I was very excited to see that in the list of fictional people that I could pick because I'm a big fan of Link. My third son is named Link, in fact. Unrelated, but a very happy coincidence that I'm happy to claim.
I love that. I'm coming into the world of WordPress people who also have families, or not families, but have additions to their families, young additions to their families. So I'm always interested to chat with other people who are ahead of the curve on me on that one. I feel like I've got a lot to learn there, but yeah, very cool. And now I know that I can name my child after video game characters and get away with it. So thanks for telling me that. I didn't quite know.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was my wife who told me that. I'm like, no, I can't. I don't think I can do that. And she's like, no, I think it would be okay. I said, okay, well, if you insist.
There you go. You got to make her think it's her idea. Then boom, you're in. All right, Brian, I appreciate you coming on, man. Well, I know the stuff you do in WordPress, but maybe not all the listeners do. Why don't you give people the rundown of you do a couple of virtual conferences and maybe some other stuff. But yeah, give people a little rundown of the stuff you're doing with WordPress.
Perfect. So as you said, I'm Brian Richards. I run WPSessions.com, where I bring speakers from all around the world to come and share what they know about working with WordPress, whether that's in the realm of running their business or development work or design work or anything else that is at least tangentially related to working with WordPress. From that, I spun off private training so that I could train development teams and create catered lessons just for what they need to be focusing on in the moment. So you've got a team and you've realized, we haven't yet worked with some piece of technology, Gatsby.js, for instance. All right, well, let's get a few lessons coordinated just for that so you can use it confidently on this next project and projects. From that, I then spun off onboarding curriculum to help teams onboard new members as quickly and efficiently as possible, bring them up to speed so that you could hire someone who's, say, maybe an entry-level or beginner developer, get them to intermediate, or someone who's intermediate, get them up to an advanced level, at least for what they need to be doing with your team pretty quickly. And then separate from all of that, more of an extension of WP session, individual monthly sessions, I have been organizing WordSesh for the last few years, which is a full day-long virtual conference. And it was originally started by Scott Bosgard, and I helped him run it a few times. And then 2 years ago, I asked, would he be interested in doing it again? Would he like to pass the reins? And so he said that I could take it and run with it. And so I reduced it from a 24-hour event to a 12-hour event because that's a sustainable amount of time for my own schedule to manage things.
Yeah, cool, man. This is one of the things I actually wanted to dig in with you today because I'm just super interested about, we talked to a lot of people, a lot of WordCamp organizers, people who spend hours and hours, tens of hours, dozens of hours, maybe even hundreds of hours putting together these huge in-person conferences that people can go to and attend. They fly there, they, grab their event ticket, they get a hotel, they get they pay for Uber or Lyft around the city when they're there. But these huge, awesome IRL events. These are slightly different. These are all entirely virtual. There is no grabbing a flight there. I've been to many a WooSesh and many a WordSesh, and it's pretty nice to be able to just log on to my computer and hang out with all my friends during these events. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the challenges you've had running a virtual conference. So I'm sure that people think of people getting a bunch of people together in one space, that obviously has its pros and cons, and it definitely has its challenges in itself. But I think a lot of people probably think like a virtual conference, you set it up on the software and then people join and, it's easy, right? But I'm sure you have a slightly different take on it. I would love to hear some of the kinks you've had to work out, or pieces that were just challenges and tough to figure out.
Yeah, careful. You're opening Pandora's box here.
No.
I could talk about this for hours. You're right. There is this perception that, virtual conference, I'll just sign up and turn it on and we're good to go. And you could do that. Back when Google Hangouts was a real big thing, that was pretty easy to just schedule that and invite people and broadcast it live. In fact, that's what I used for a long time for WP Sessions. And I would just embed the YouTube video directly on my site, and everybody could just show up on my site and watch the thing while I ran it all through Google Hangouts. But I didn't really love the quality of that. Anybody who's watched a live broadcast from Google Hangouts, which, by the way, you can still do if you go to schedule a live event through YouTube. But I eventually gave up on that because the audio quality was not perfect. The video quality was pretty soft. And that got to be a really big deal when someone was sharing their screen, particularly if they're trying to show code.
I think anybody who's used Google Hangouts would say there are probably better options out there.
The tool that I've used the last few events is called Crowdcast, and that's at crowdcast.io. I love that. The quality is far superior, and all of the stuff is built in. So you've got the video, obviously, for up to, I think, 4 different participants or 2 participants who are both sharing their screens. And chat's built in, polling, Q&A are all built in. You can schedule multi-session events, and that's pretty slick. I like that a lot because it doesn't make my machine the linchpin in the entire operation. So if my internet cuts out or my computer freezes or my power goes out or anything else, the broadcast can still happen without
that's
me.
Really interesting.
To a degree. I still have to be there to start it. But if I drop out, I can get back in, which was not true with Hangouts. Yeah. If you got kicked out of the Hangout that you started, you're kind of hosed. It was a bad day. And that's important because all 3 of those things, I had my internet itself cut out right as I was introducing the very first speaker of the day. One of the times, Chrome froze on me while I was in the middle of Q&A on one of the sessions. And then my computer just had a kernel panic and crashed, and I had to restart the whole dang thing. And that's embarrassing and challenging and frustrating. To combat that, I've experimented with pre-recording the sessions, but then rebroadcasting the recordings as if they were still a live session. And that worked out really well. It was annoying to thread it all together, but I knew before the broadcast even started that, yes, we have a good quality recording. You can hear the speaker clearly through the entire thing. You can see all of their slides. Nothing's missing. 2, no matter what happens to my machine or the speaker's machine, this will still be a high quality broadcast. And 3, because it is still fixed to a schedule, people have to show up and participate together, which I think is the most important part of an event, is getting people there during the live broadcast to talk to each other, to interact with the speakers when possible, because a lot more is possible. Even if the content itself is pre-recorded, the interactions in the event chat, in my case, or in the hallway track, if you were talking about a physical event, those change fundamentally what the material is and elevate the experience that you're getting compared to, say, just watching a recording at some other point. The other thing that this changes is a lot of people will purchase training aspirationally. I want to learn that. I'm going to watch that. And then they never come back to it. They're like, oh, well, I've got it, so I can go and look at it later. But when you fix something to a schedule and say, you have to show up and watch this tomorrow, the participation rate increases. People don't just register themselves aspirationally. They go, well, shoot, I got to learn this right now. And then they have an opportunity to apply some new training, which I like a lot. At a high level, there are lots of different tools that need to be used to get the event together. And I can tell you, I'm exploring Vimeo Live for future events because there are a lot of cool things that I can do with that. It makes it more of like an honest to goodness production. They have their production software for adding graphics and transitions and cutting between sources. But then through other tools that I can bring into the tool chain, I can still do things like pre-recorded video that doesn't depend on my machine, which is really
cool,
slick.
Man. Okay, so sounds like Crowdcast and Vimeo are kind of two options. I'm sure there are other options out there, but those are kind of two core ones to look at for live broadcasting. I've been on a webinar that was using Crowdcast, and I really liked it. I did a webinar with Joe Casabona a few weeks ago now, and he was using Crowdcast. It was lovely. So as someone who's actually in the webinar or in the event, it was really nice and easy to use. As someone who's watched an event in Crowdcast too, it's also nice. I love how seamless it is. You can have like different rooms of events happening all at one time. You just click the button, a little drop down, go to this room. It just starts up automatically. It's not super heavy on your machine. Yeah, works pretty well. I would love to hear a little bit more about the actually getting people to the virtual event. We've started hosting webinars at WP Buffs, and they're for WordPress professionals. They're to help people with certain aspects of WordPress. We actually just did one right before we hopped on here the podcast today, this afternoon. Yeah, Kaylin did one with Anthony over at Beaver Builder, and it was all about kind of putting websites together with a page builder and how that can help your workflow and scale your agency and all that stuff. But we were looking at the numbers, and we were seeing we got over 300 people registered for the webinar, which was great. It was our highest registration until this webinar or thus far. But we only had about 60 or so people attending live at one time. So the ratio there is not exactly what I would like. I think some people, especially when you're sending recording out afterwards, a significant amount of people are probably not going to show up that want the recording afterwards. But I would like for it to be more like closer to 50-50 at least than, the like 15 or so % we got with this one. And that's usually we're around 15 to 25% show up for the actual webinar. So it sounds like one tip you have is kind of to make it super important to show up, like for the actual day of the event. Anything else that you think helps people like really like show up that day? Like, I'm ready for WooSesh today. Today it's on my calendar. Like, today is WooSesh day. Like, any tips you can give me on like just personally how we can make our webinars better to make people actually try to engage and attend on day of?
I would be happy to. And to close out my other thought, for anybody who's looking to do similar virtual events, Crowdcast is a beautiful place to start. They have very inexpensive plans and everything is just there. You just show up in your browser, your other participants, if you have them, show up in their browser. Nothing to install except for a simple browser extension. We
don't have any sponsors on the show.
Getting the audience
we always
there,
bring in a few like low-key sponsors because people love their tools.
Yeah. So getting people there is the biggest challenge. And there are so many factors that go into that. Like I said earlier, where people register for things aspirationally or by training aspirationally, they'll go, I'm interested in this. Let me sign up. And many people, in my experience, sign up before they've even checked their schedule. Like, oh, yeah, this sounds cool. Let me sign up for this. Oh, I can't go, but I'll watch the recording later, probably. And so getting at least half of the people who register doing that behavior is very common. And then for the other half who are like, this shows up perfectly in my time zone and for my schedule, I'm going to register and participate. You'll still have another half drop out because something came up, right? Like, oh, I really wanted to watch that, but I also really need to get this thing done. So I'm not going to show up and I'm going to get my thing done. And so there's another 25% of your possible attendees.
I almost always belong to the first half of people, which is people who register and don't check their schedule at all. I think this is a great webinar. Whatever. I'll put it on my calendar whether I can or not. But then I have no idea what my calendar looks like. And a significant portion of the time, I already have a meeting booked during that time, or I always have something. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll watch the recording. So I do it too.
Yeah, I did that just a week ago. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to watch this. This sounds pretty cool. And then I went and I checked my email this morning. I'm like, oh, that's coming up. That's coming up tomorrow, right? No, that was last week. I missed it. Whoops. So yeah, there's not a lot you can do to combat that besides sort of getting in people's faces. And so if we start way back at the beginning, how do you host a webinar that people want to attend? Just as a baseline, how do we get something that people want to register for? And the first thing you need to do is to produce a webinar around a topic that somebody is interested. And that could be something that you're interested in teaching, that you know well enough to put a presentation together and teach, or you have someone else who knows what they know well enough to teach it. Ideally, are also a good speaker or teacher. They understand sort of the hero's journey and the student's perspective and can relate the information in a way that the audience can understand and benefit from most. So start there. Start with something that is worth somebody's time, that they are probably already interested in.
So the way we've done that a little bit is we just use this tool called Hotjar. It has these little polls come up on the website. It does a bunch of different stuff. But what we did is on the page people get redirected to when they subscribe, we had a little poll come up and say, like, we ask a bunch of different questions there, from like, how'd you find us? Because we were interested in that data, but we're also interested in like, what kind of speed optimization are you interested in doing? Like in what, or where are you having trouble with speed optimization, to see if we can get some data on that. So Kaylin put that poll up, and it has this data like, 50% of people are having issues with their images. Okay, so like, let's try and do a webinar on that. So we have a little bit of that because we just try and ask our email subscribers kind of like, what are you interested in? So I think it's a mix. You want to ask people, but you also want to do what you think is right. So we kind of do that.
Yeah, so that's good. That's a really good first start. Just overtly asking, what would you like us to talk about? And some people are happy to tell you that. Some people are just like, I'm not going to answer a survey.
And some people give you
You're not sending this to me personally. You don't
answers.
care.
We get a few little like,
yeah,
not safe for work
that will
answers.
happen. Yeah. And so that essentially was how WP Sessions was birthed. 6 years ago, I was facing a technical problem that I hadn't encountered yet. And I'm like, how have I missed this? And at that point in time, I'd been developing websites for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. I'm like, how have I made it this far? And I haven't yet solved this. This is such a basic thing. And I have no idea where to begin. This is insulting. But I bet there are other people who are in this like me, because all of us have our own journey. Maybe I could hire someone who does know this, pay them for an hour, and just ask them questions. And maybe I could even sell tickets to this. And so all of us get our questions answered. And ta-da! That's exactly what I did. WP Sessions was born, and I started hosting other people who knew their areas of interest well enough to teach the rest of us, so that selfishly I could learn, but so could the broader WordPress community. The next thing to do, after you've picked a topic that people are probably interested in, is to make sure that they know you're hosting this webinar. So there are lots of avenues to do this, right? Marketing is how you get people to show up. So if you have a mailing list already, email them and let them know, hey, here's this thing that's coming. If you're smart, you'll email them more than once. So you'll have the initial announcement email, hey, this thing is coming. And it is several weeks away still. A few days later, you'll email and say, hey, get to know our speaker. Here's some things you might want to know about them and how cool they are. A couple days pass, you send them another email and say, here are some of the things you're going to learn. Or even better, here's what you'll be able to do after this. The difference there, the benefits versus the features, was best explained to me as people don't want to buy a 1/2-inch drill bit. What they want to buy is a 1/2-inch hole. They don't care about the tool you're selling. They care about the result. That's what they're after. So if you can explain why this webinar is useful to them from their perspective of, here's how I'm going to benefit from this, you are going to be far and away better than most people who promote their webinars. And so you're doing that via email, getting the word out multiple times to make sure that people know it's coming. You're doing that via all of your social channels, right? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Wherever people follow you already, you're letting them know, hey, here's this thing that you're probably interested in. If you're planning a big deal, like my conferences, you probably want to also pay for advertising in as many different places where your audience already spends their time, so that they will see this and know that it's happening. If you're just trying to get your feet wet and get your first webinar out there, I would skip that for now and just talk to the people you already have who are listening to you for free, and make a few of these before you make the plunge and say, you know what, this is pretty great. Let me pay to get more people to show up.
That part's interesting, because I've thought about doing paid ads for webinar stuff. Kale and I have talked about this a little bit. I'm a little hesitant right now, I think, because of the reason that we're still trying to get like a pretty clear conversion, some sort of conversion from webinar attendee to WP Buff's customer or WP Buff's white label partner. So until we can like make that a little bit more seamless, it doesn't quite make sense to pay for ads yet. So I agree with you. I think at the beginning, paying for ads may be something you can experiment with. And it's good to, if you need to get a few people in the door and get some surveys back to like improve your webinar, like that's one way you could do that for sure. But before you start paying thousands of dollars for ads and stuff, you probably want to have at least some way that that's going to come back to you financially.
Yeah, exactly. And so you do all of these things to let people know ahead of time, here's this thing that's happening. Now, how do we get them in the seat the day of the event? Well, if we accept the fact that half of the people who registered had no intention of showing up ever, you're only worried about getting the other half. And really, it's how do we get the half of that half, right? The 25% who did register and decided last minute that they weren't going to make it. And to help with that, the simplest answer is to pay them. And obviously, you're not like, here's $10, please come to my webinar. But it's usually by way of things that they cannot get except by coming to the webinar. So maybe there's a special giveaway that you're doing. You're offering 1 free hour of consultation or 1 free month or some percentage discount on the product or service that you run. Some reason to say, oh, wow. So if I show up to this, I also get this other benefit. That's pretty cool. But outside of that, obviously just hammer home one more time the day of, several hours before, and then an hour before, and then 10 minutes before. Hey, this thing is starting today. Hey, it's coming up soon. Hey, join right now and get in the chat so that you are ready. Don't forget, you're going to get these benefits. You're going to learn these things. You're going to be this kind of person when it's over. Whatever it is that you are providing, reiterate that in the reminders that are leading up to the event. And to plug Crowdcast again, because it's such a slick tool, they have built-in reminders at intervals like these so that you can just write the content for that as you're preparing for the event. And you can just know, okay, my audience is going to be notified leading up to the event. You don't have to do anything else to remember to do that, which is handy for someone like me who routinely forgets to actually schedule the stuff in advance.
Yeah, for sure. Don't leave it up to your manual self to do anything that you can automate.
Yeah, so that covers a lot of the how, but I realized as I was explaining here are the tools and the hows, we kind of skipped right past the why of hosting a webinar, which is kind of like the most important part. Why would anybody waste their time doing this?
Brian, tell me why you are hosting these events. Tell me why WooSesh, why WordSesh.
Yeah, so my personal benefit, right, is I'm earning my living from doing these, directly from doing them. But for people who are listening to this, who are running their own businesses, who are working on growing your monthly recurring revenue one way or another, whether that's via SaaS or product, your benefit is going to be growing your audience and therefore growing your customer base because you are helping get the word out about what you do. And the webinars don't even need to be, here's my tool and how to use it. It can be other related content, like you, Joe, hosting a webinar on image optimization and other performance things that WP buffs provide to point out, here's how you do this. Here's some free value that we're putting out into the world to help you manage your website better. And by the way, if you would like this to just be done for you, my company can do that. This is one of many things that we do for you automatically. And if you host enough of those, you are going to gain a reputation of a company who produces high quality resources that anybody can use. And then way down the road from this, people who are searching for, how do I optimize my images? What's a good way? We'll see if you do this right. You've hosted a webinar, you've made a blog post, you've embedded some of the details from it. They find that and go, oh, wow, this is cool. Oh, actually, this seems a little tedious. Oh, I can just pay them. Done. I'm in. So there's just one of the many whys you might do that. My other benefit from hosting WordSesh and WooSesh and running WP Sessions is I get a certain sense of self-satisfaction from helping good people do great things. And this is one of the best ways I've found to multiply my own capabilities of doing that by bringing lots of people together simultaneously and just filling their heads with knowledge from other people who are even smarter than me, who are even better at doing these things. I like doing that a lot. And so I'm pleased to have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, very cool, man. I think as long as the activities you're doing stem from, your values and the things you find kind of really benefit yourself in a way by benefiting others, that's what is scalable. Like that's what you can do for not only like this month or next month, but you can do for years on end. We've had people on the podcast, like Channing from Indie Hackers, and we've had Robbie from Beaver Builder, and like those two guys come out particularly. They stand out particularly, as do you, as people who are just like, I want to do this thing because I love helping other people. I definitely get that vibe from WooSesh and WordSesh, as well as WPSessions. Yeah, for sure. It's sometimes you just go to these websites or you interact with these people and you're like, of course they have people's best interests at heart. Like there's no other no other way it could be. These events are free, are they not?
Yes, they are. There was a brief moment last year where I started charging for WordSesh, and there was just a tiny uproar, as I expected, because WordSesh had been free for the 4 years prior, and I thought I should put some of the onus back on the attendees, both to make sure that they have a reason to show up live because they paid for it, but also so they recognize that these things are not free to produce. They cost several thousands of dollars just to make one event. And in particular, I enjoy paying the speakers for their time. I pay for someone to show up and provide live captioning of the events that I'm very happy to do because I enjoy having captions. And I know lots of other people do as well. And there were only a couple of people that I saw like, why are you charging for this? Which is fine. I was expecting way more than that. But an even greater thing that I noticed is that attendance dropped tremendously. Wow. There were only a few hundred people who showed up in the 2018 event compared to the 1,000 and 1,000 plus that I've come to enjoy at the events before that and since that. So I'm still torn about that. I do believe that people who are attending should pay, but I also have many generous sponsors who are willing to just take care of that cost so that it can be broadcast to as many people as possible. Two of the things that I did when I made it a paid event, one is that I set up a script to offer purchase power parity so that the price was the equivalent of, it was $25 if you paid full price, $15 if you got an early bird or group discount per ticket. So it'd be the equivalent of that wherever you live, which meant that it wasn't, $25 US in India. It was essentially $9 or $12 US in India, which was the same sort of cost. It's pretty neat. It was fun to research that and rather eye-opening to see the disparity in e-commerce or in commerce in general across all of the different countries. But then the other thing I did was I just opened up an opportunity for scholarships. So anybody who wanted a scholarship could apply, and 100% of the people who applied for one got one. And then people who wanted to donate scholarships could pay for one and donate it to someone they had in mind or just make it available in the general pool. And that was pretty cool to see people signing up to pay for other people, to see people who wanted to attend who applied for a scholarship. So it could have still been free if someone had $0 to attend. But I like making it free, even though I think people should have a responsibility to pay because it has a natural virality to it when it's free. Someone tweets a quote from a session that they're watching, someone clicks the link and joins the session and then hangs out for the rest of the day, which is really nice when it's a free event. When it's a paid event and they see that and they click the link and they go, no, I don't have time to invest into this right now. Even though it's only $25, they've got no exposure to it. They're like, it's probably neat, but I'm busy right now. And then they just miss out. Which is a bummer.
I can see that happening because when these events happen, a lot of times, like I have this big kind of gaming monitor here. So I don't do any gaming, but it's like a big curved monitor here. Like, so I can have all my stuff going on at once. So I'll join and I'll just kind of have it on all day, but it'll just kind of be over here in my monitor and I'm kind of doing some work on this end. And if I clicked on a link or something, just wanted it open all day, and if there's a paywall of $25, it may not even be the $25. It's just, this wall has this effect of just like, my wallet's on the other side of the room. Like, do I really have to go get it right now? I'm like, does it work? Like, and sometimes I'll do it and sometimes I won't, like for a lot of different things. Right. And so it's interesting to see like I'm sure there are a lot of reasons in addition to just the pure payment of it, of why people won't come if it's a paid thing. Yeah. There's
a lot of interesting psychology there.
Yeah. I've talked with, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, for a long time, WP Sessions was a pay-to-attend platform. So you could register and get an early bird price for any session that I host, and that didn't register until later. Then you just paid full price, and you could watch the recording afterwards. No big deal. And for a little while, I would also make some of those free 6 months after the fact. So you could just show up and watch an old session for free. I realized that sort of destroyed the benefit of a membership where you get access to all of the stuff, because if somebody just waits long enough, they could eventually watch the entire library for free anyway. So I flipped it and made it, you can attend live for free. If you can make time in your schedule, then yes, you can come and watch. But if you want to watch the recording anytime after the fact, that's one low price, or you can watch every recording for another annual price, which is still way cheaper than it would have been to buy every single recording. And then I switched to just members only, because it reduced the decision of like, which of these do I want to buy to, do I want all of them or none of them? And so making WordSesh and WooSesh again free to attend live is just a beautiful extension of that model that I was already using. So if anybody shows up during the live event, it's totally free. You can watch and participate and enjoy all of the benefits of being part of the active community. And if you don't have time in your schedule, or you miss a session or whatever, it's not a big deal, because it's recorded, and you can just come to WP Sessions as a member and watch everything. And you can either sign up annually and get everything and download it and take it with you as you go, or you can sign up just for that month and watch as much as you want and either renew month over month or not.
Yeah, this model of like membership and pursuing kind of a subscription model very much intrigues me in terms of like courses or collection of videos or community. So there have been other virtual conferences as well in the WordPress space. Zach Gordon does his JavaScript for WP conference every year, and Zach's similar to yours. I remember his getting like 1,000+ people. And I would love to hear a little bit, because there are probably listeners here who are like, this sounds interesting, like to do something like this or to throw a little free thing for something. Can you think back to like your first WooSesh or your first virtual conference you ever threw? And because it's hard to do like a membership and get people to pay you on an ongoing basis when you just like don't have much content yet. I'd love to hear like more about those early days and kind of how you got to the point of even like starting to say like, why don't you pay me for a membership so you can stick around? Because I'm sure it's a little harder in those early days.
Yeah, no, that's good. And this sort of ties into your question earlier about like, how do I get, people to show up to this thing? I have had many webinars where only a couple dozen people joined me out of my audience of a couple thousand. I'm like, man, where is everybody? And of course, it dawned on me, well, first, I wasn't following my own advice of actually promoting this well enough in advance. And second, a lot of people don't need to come live because they're members and they can just enjoy the recording at any point. Many of whom presumably purchased aspirationally and may never even watch the recording. They are comforted in knowing that it's there, right? So when WP Sessions first launched, I just took some of my own money. I think I set aside $3,000 as an experiment. I'm like, I'm willing to spend $3,000 to see, is this something that should exist in the world that people want? And that was enough for me to pay for all the infrastructure I needed to set up, pay for my speakers to show up and present. And the first several were almost like mini conferences, as a matter of fact. I got 3 speakers together. We would join up on a Saturday. We'd just go 3 speakers back to back to back. And people could show up and watch the whole thing or tune into any one of them. You buy a ticket, you get access to everything, recordings, live broadcasts, the whole shebang. And it was one-off only. And so Memorial weekend here in the US, Memorial Day weekend, the idea hit me on a Friday, and I thought, I don't know if this has any legs. And then by Monday, I'm like, no, I got to do this. So I bought the domain. I put up a landing page and said, would you be interested in a mini virtual event? Put in your email address. And in a day, I had several hundred people subscribe. Like, oh, okay, I should probably actually organize this thing. And so I reached out to several speakers. All of them said, yeah, I'd be interested in presenting. And that's when I decided, okay, let's put the first one live. And I created the sales page, set up a WooCommerce site, allowed people to purchase a ticket for the first ever broadcast. I think it was $25. And I made about $1,000 in the very first event. I'm like, okay, it seems to me that there are enough people who are interested in this that I could keep doing it. And so then I scheduled the next 2. And not only did I not lose the $3,000 of my money that I set aside to do this, but I made money. Like, all right, well, let's just keep doing this. And so I did 5 of them. And that brought me to the very first Black Friday that I could promote things. And so I made a VIP pass where you pay for this pass and you access all of the sessions that I've done and any sessions that I do for the next 12 months. And I had a bunch of people buy that. I said, okay, well, now I know I have to definitely keep making these sessions. And so when WP Sessions turned 1, I said, okay, if you want to be a member, same deal as this one-off pass that I sold. You can get every session that I did and every session that I make for the next year. And that will be true for as long as you remain a member. And to make sure that people don't feel put out by well, wait a minute, if I just buy the session alone, I have it forever. But if I join as a membership, I only get it as long as I'm a member. I also added the opportunity for people to download the broadcast. So that's sort of how it birthed. I didn't start off with a membership right out the gate because I knew I don't have enough content. I don't know if I'm going to make content. So I'll just sell these as one-off installments. And if I can do this enough times, then once I got to that 5th one, I think I had produced 4 and the 5th one was coming after Black Friday. I said, okay, this is enough for me to sell a pass. Even if I don't make any more, this is still a good price just for these first 5, which was, as I said, 3 presenters each. That would have been 15 hours of content.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's sort of how it sort of grew organically into a membership.
It's cool. So WPMRR it's this podcast, but it's also a video course. And I started off doing it as a subscription because I was like, okay, WordPress monthly recurring revenue, it has to be it has to be a subscription, or it's I have to eat my own dog food, right? And I just kind of realized at a certain points, I have probably 10 hours of video content. And then we have a Facebook group going on, but it just hasn't gotten to the point yet where I feel comfortable people will really be willing to pay for a subscription. We had a few signups and we had enough signups pre-sale to pay for the development of the course, which is great. But the ongoing signups, it just kind of turned into something. I said, okay, let's just make this one time for now. And I had the same thoughts, I got to make this one time for now. But when it grows to the point where it makes more sense to be a subscription, we have enough content, we have enough stuff going on, then maybe a subscription makes more sense. I really love how you started that whole kind of founding story as you put this budget together. And then you said, okay, this is the budget I have for an experiment to see if this works. And to me, that's how you bootstrap a business. I think a lot of people who want to start businesses, you have to hustle and get, maybe use your revenue from your full-time job, put a little bit away, create a budget for yourself and say, this is my experiment. Maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $2,000 to say, I'm going to experiment with this thing and I'm going to put this money in and be willing to lose it all. And just to get an answer of yes or no. Do I think this has legs or do I not? And you may have to go through that a couple times or a few times until you find the thing that has legs. But that's what it takes, is just having just that little bit of runway to just know, is this going to work or not? And then if you really feel like it is, then doubling down on it. And then look where you are today, man, doing this. 1,000 people come into virtual conferences and it came from $3,000 of investment. And that's pretty special.
It is pretty special. Like I said, I feel privileged to have this opportunity to be where I am, to connect people, but then also to get paid for it. It's a dream,
man. That's it. That's where we're going to wrap up today, because that is a perfect place to stop. But dude, why don't you tell people where they can find all your stuff online? Let's repeat those domains, and maybe if you're on social and all that stuff.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Risen, but it's spelled RZEN, because I crafted that as a 7th grader and thought, this sounds awesome. It's going to be my handle everywhere. Oh, it's terrible to explain. So I'm Risen, spelled wrong. And if you want to follow WP Sessions, that's at WP Sessions on Twitter or WPSessions.com. And from WP Sessions, I host WordSesh.com and WooSesh.com. And it's a lot of fun.
If you're checking out Brian on Twitter, you'll know you found him because he's got this upside down profile picture with the curly hair. Easy to spot. So yeah, man. The last thing I always ask guests to do is to ask our listeners for a little 5-star iTunes review. So if you wouldn't mind giving our listeners a little ask, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. If you enjoyed any part of this podcast, I encourage you to leave a review on iTunes. You wouldn't think that it makes a big difference, but leaving a 5-star review and adding a comment there really helps raise the visibility of this podcast so that other people can find it and enjoy these gems as much as you did.
Boom. That was super professional. Thank you, Brian. Excellent. And if you're leaving that review, make sure you leave Brian's name in the comments or something you learned about this episode so we can forward it to him and make sure he knows, hey, thanks for helping us out getting a little review. And sounds like people got some nice value from this episode too. So we'll forward that to him if you leave it. If you wanted to leave that review, WPMRR.com/iTunes. Got a little redirect going on. Make it easy for you. If you're a new listener, you're already binging so much TV and so much Netflix. It's all you do. Why not binge some of the WPMRR WordPress podcasts? We've got dozens of hours, excellent content. Yeah, I've spent a ton of time just talking with amazing people. I actually go through old episodes all the time because that sounds narcissistic, but it's actually to listen to the guests because they always have so much amazing stuff to say that, and especially after I do the episode, I'm like, I got to go back and listen to that again because that was amazing. This will be one of those episodes, Brian, for sure. So yeah, if you want to go and binge some old episodes, feel free, WPMRR.com/podcast. All right, that is all for this week. We will catch y'all again next Tuesday. Brian, thanks again for coming on. It's been real.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See you, everybody.